I've noticed that when it comes to choosing a partner, a lot of people have a serious cognitive bias. They chase after an ideal that simply doesn't exist for them in reality. There's a huge disconnect between the kind of person they want and the kind of person they can actually attract. This is precisely why so many people end up as so-called leftover women. They're holding out for someone who, quite frankly, isn't within their reach. Take my female friends, for example. I often get messages from them asking me to introduce them to potential matches. They send me a list of requirements. I want a guy who's at least 6 feet tall, makes over 200,000 yuan a year, has a bachelor's degree, comes from a good family, and is an only child. On the surface, none of these criteria sound unreasonable. Wanting a tall partner? Fair enough. Hoping for financial stability? Totally understandable. But when you stack all these conditions together, the dating pool shrinks dramatically. And then they wonder why they can't find anyone suitable. Let's break this down. The average height of a Chinese man is around 172 centimeters, 5 feet 8 inches. Men over 6 feet tall are already in the minority. Then you add in the salary requirement. 200,000 yuan a year is significantly above the national average. Now, you've eliminated another huge portion of the male population. Then comes the demand that he be an only child, which makes the search even tougher. The reality is, a guy who checks all these boxes is extremely rare, and if he does exist, he's in very high demand. The harsh truth? He's not looking for you, he has plenty of other options. Yet, so many women cling to these unrealistic standards. This is the kind of man I want, they insist. But they never stop to ask themselves, am I the kind of woman a man like this would want? That's the part they don't want to face. Many women fantasize about fairy tale romances, thinking that one day, some wealthy, tall, charming CEO will fall in love with them at first sight, despite the fact that they bring nothing equally valuable to the table. And that's how they end up single for years. Now, some women don't have such rigid, checklist-based standards. Instead, they say, I just want someone who's interesting and fun. But here's the problem. Finding a truly interesting person is actually harder than finding a guy who's 6 feet tall or financially well off.
Why?
Because most people are, let's be honest, pretty boring. Genuinely interesting people, the kind with deep insights, unique perspectives, and an engaging personality, are rare. There's a reason the saying goes, an interesting soul is one in a million. And let's be real, when people say they want an interesting soul, they don't mean just interesting. They mean interesting and good-looking. Would they still be interested in a guy who's witty and charming but weighs 250 pounds? Unlikely. The truth is, their so-called preference for personality is just another filter for looks, whether they admit it or not. Then there are the women who say, I have so many guys chasing me. The line of suitors stretches from my house all the way to Paris. But here's the real question. Are those men actually serious about a long-term relationship? Because the reality is, men will flirt with anyone. A shameless guy could be hitting on 10 or 20 women at the same time, throwing out compliments like fishing bait. But what does he really want? For most men, it's not marriage, it's just a temporary fling. So when a woman brags about how many men are after her, I have to ask, are they after you? Or are they just circling like flies? Because let's be honest, flies aren't attracted to treasure. They're attracted to something else. A true high-value woman, the kind men genuinely admire, doesn't get approached that often because most men are intimidated by her. Average guys won't even dare to flirt with a real goddess. They'll admire her from afar, but they know they don't stand a chance. The ones who do approach her, they're usually playing games or trying their luck. So if a woman keeps telling you about how many men are after her, my advice? Walk away. Even if she eventually marries you, she'll always feel like she settled. She'll think back to the endless attention she used to get and resent you for not measuring up. That's not a recipe for a happy marriage. At the end of the day, the biggest mistake people make when choosing a partner is failing to recognize the gap between who they want and who they can realistically get. What kind of person you attract depends entirely on what you bring to the table. A lot of people lack self-awareness. They insist on holding out for a dream partner, while refusing to acknowledge that, in reality, they can only attract someone far below that standard. They stubbornly refuse to adjust their expectations, and so they remain single indefinitely. People love to say, I refuse to settle. But what does settling really mean? It just means finding someone who matches your own level. Think about it. If a guy is tall, successful, and highly desirable, why would he settle for you? He has options. A man who meets all your ideal standards isn't desperate, he's not blind, and he's not going to pick someone who doesn't meet his own criteria in return. So, here's my advice. Be honest with yourself. Recognize the difference between fantasy and reality. Understand your own strengths and weaknesses. Work on self-improvement and set realistic expectations. Because if you lack self-awareness, you'll stay single forever.
Can you believe it? The place in China with the highest number of leftover women isn't the big first-tier cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, or Shenzhen. Nor is it the rural villages where families traditionally favor sons over daughters. Instead, it's the county-level cities where highly educated women with stable government jobs are struggling to find partners and remain unmarried. Take my high school classmate, for example. She graduated from a prestigious university, has delicate features, and secured a civil service job in a county in Hubei after graduation. She quickly climbed the ranks, and her parents proudly bragged about her success. But that pride turned into silent embarrassment when she hit 30. She had been so focused on her career that she had never been in a relationship. Whenever her mother boasted about her accomplishments, someone would cut in with, "But she's still not married. I already have grandkids," leaving her mother speechless. My friend, once the pride of her family, suddenly became a source of shame. At one point, her mother was so distraught that she couldn't sleep and even knelt beside her bed in the middle of the night, begging her to stop being so picky and just get married. The pressure nearly drove her to a mental breakdown. I know what some of you might be thinking. Wait a minute. Most unmarried women in county-level cities are female civil servants, teachers, or doctors. They're educated, have stable incomes, and hold respectable jobs. 10 years ago, these women would have been the most sought-after brides, with matchmakers lining up at their doors. So how are they ending up single now? Some even predict that in the next 20 years, it will be 10 or even 100 times harder for a woman in a county to find a suitable partner than to secure a stable job. But in a country where men outnumber women by 30 million, how did things end up this way? Many people say it's simple. Leftover men lack financial resources, and leftover women have unrealistic standards. But based on my observations, this explanation is overly simplistic. Women like my friend remain single for 3 main reasons. First, the gender imbalance in government jobs. One major reason highly educated county women remain single is the drastic gender imbalance in government jobs. Back in 2011, the male-to-female ratio for China's civil service exam was nearly 1-to-1. But by 2021, the gap had widened dramatically, reaching 1:3. One man for every 3 women due to the economic downturn, and women seek stability over income. The government sector has practically become a women's kingdom. This is especially obvious in the education system. Another friend of mine, who teaches at a top county high school in Hubei, told me that in 2023, the school hired 22 new teachers. Only 4 were men, and all of them were either married or engaged. The remaining 18 were single women. And that's just a high school. If you visit primary and middle schools in county towns, young male teachers are nearly extinct. My friend often complains that even though the county organizes matchmaking events, the pool of unmarried government-employed men is so small that she keeps running into the same faces. If a match doesn't work out the first time, there's no second chance. With such an imbalanced ratio, is it really surprising that so many women remain single? Second, a shortage of high-quality men in county towns. Another major problem is the lack of desirable men in county towns. Studies show that most highly educated women in county towns work in top local schools or government offices. They're already at the top of the local dating market. Given their qualifications, is it unreasonable for them to expect a partner who is at least 180 centimeters tall, has a bachelor's degree, and earns over 10,000 yuan per month? But let's look at reality. In China, Only 10.8% of the labor force aged 20 to 40 has a bachelor's degree. Among men aged 20 to 29, the average height is 172 centimeters. In Shanghai, the country's most developed city, the median salary in 2022 was just 6,906 yuan. This means that a man who earns over 7,000 yuan is at least 172 centimeters tall and has a bachelor's degree is already 1 in 40. Now, imagine finding a man who is 175 centimeters or taller, earns over 10,000 yuan a month, and graduated from a top-tier university. How many such men exist in a small county? Almost none. These men are in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen, long taken by big city women. Faced with this situation, many women who refuse to lower their standards end up with no choice but to stay single. Third, county women don't want to marry down. Some may ask, why don't county women just lower their standards and marry outside the system? Easier said than done. Most private sector jobs in county towns are neither stable nor well paid. Skilled professionals might earn 4,000 to 5,000 yuan per month, while white-collar salaries are even lower than blue-collar wages. Job opportunities are also limited, and many service jobs pay less than 3,000 yuan a month. Unless a man is a successful entrepreneur, making over 10,000 yuan a month is nearly impossible, meaning he wouldn't even be considered by government-employed women. For county women, marrying a private sector worker is essentially marrying down, unless he's a small business owner with significant assets. Moreover, women tend to prefer marrying up, making it even harder for them to consider private sector men. Even within the government sector, some men are seen as less desirable. County women prioritize government jobs in this order: civil servants, especially those in law enforcement and judiciary, followed by doctors, then teachers. Among teachers, high school teachers are acceptable, but primary school male teachers are the least preferred. Given that there are already so few quality men in county towns, and that many women refuse to compromise, it's no wonder so many remain single. As my friend says, even if she wants to compromise, she has very few options, especially as she gets older. At 25 or 26, matchmakers would introduce her to promising young men. But by 30, she was only meeting men who were either bald, divorced, or otherwise undesirable. She refused to settle, and so she remained single. So, don't be surprised that despite China's surplus of 30 million men, there are still 100 million single women in cities across the country. It's just fate.
Why are there more and more leftover women in big cities? To put it bluntly, most of them aren't from these cities to begin with. They come from smaller towns, fight tooth and nail to establish themselves in first-tier cities, and along the way, get used to a more extravagant lifestyle. But after years of struggle, they develop sky-high expectations for men while refusing to settle for anything ordinary. They live paycheck to paycheck, spending as fast as they earn. Their careers stagnate, but they don't put in the effort to level up. They hate frugality, avoid hardship, and dream of meeting a man who can upgrade their lifestyle overnight. Forget thriftiness, forget homemaking skills. Those concepts don't exist in their world. But here's the cold reality. Too many average women, too little chads. Truly desirable men are as rare as phoenix feathers. Take Shanghai, for example. Your average 35 or 36-year-old man who hasn't secured property, residency, or a stable marriage will most likely pack up and return his hometown or a second-tier city. The men who stay in big cities, they have options, plenty of them. They can date up or down the social ladder as they please. Of course, the women left behind in Shanghai will argue, but I have plenty of high-quality suitors. Sister, what you're seeing is just mist in the air. Look closer, and you'll realize that most of these so-called quality men are just here for fun. They have zero intention of settling down. They can walk away at any time, yet their fleeting attention creates an illusion, tricking you into thinking, there are so many great men out there. You should feel lucky I'm dating you. The truth, everything you can offer to a high-value man, another woman can offer too. Maybe even better. You're just one of his triple-digit ex-girlfriends, and most likely, the least significant one at that. You really think these men aren't picky? Their high quality is often just an illusion. Carefully curated packaging designed to make you feel disposable. Women in big cities think they're the ones doing the choosing. They take comfort in the idea that China has 30 million more men than women, as if they'll never run out of options. So, they keep raising the bar. The house deed must include their name. The car must be registered under them. And before they realize it, they've upgraded from leftover women to leftover annuities. Even after hitting 30, they cling to their filtered social media photos, watching as a handful of simp admirers drop comments, hyping them up. And just like that, they convince themselves they're still highly desirable. But sisters, let's be real. Those 30 million extra men, they're not in first-tier cities. They're in struggling rural villages. Meanwhile, men in major cities are far more pragmatic about marriage than women. They calculate everything. Whether a woman can manage a household, bear children, and handle finances responsibly.
Any older woman who's still single, it's because her price-performance ratio is too high. That's what a recently divorced male friend told me. His reasoning? The accomplished, independent, and attractive older women who are still seeking marriage have one fundamental issue. Their standards are too high. The men they want don't want them, he said. And the men who do want them don't meet their expectations. They've priced themselves out of the market. They held out for something better. But after too many years on the shelf, they end up unable to settle, neither up nor down. I pushed back. But what about their beauty, their degrees, their high incomes? Aren't those advantages? He shook his head. Beauty? Sure. But there are plenty of beautiful 20-year-olds with lower demands. A degree from a top-tier university? In first-tier city office buildings, top graduates are a dime a dozen. A $20K monthly salary? She won't spend that money on family. It just becomes leverage to demand even more from me. I'd rather she earn nothing and have a good attitude. And then there's the issue of kids. She says she'll have children in 5 years and raise high-achieving kids within 20. But let's be real, at her age, who even knows if she can conceive? Younger women can be just as beautiful, just as educated, just as capable of raising children, but they don't come with the baggage. They don't make you wait 5 years while demanding 2 million renminbi in the meantime. Then he delivered the final blow. A smart man with options should never marry a woman over 30. Luxury brands never struggle to find buyers. But if something stays on the shelf too long, it's either overpriced or not as luxury as it thinks it is. So what do you think? Does he have a point? Or is he just another guy with a bruised ego, trying to rationalize his own choices?